Also in 1940, the leader of my party, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, withdrew his political support from him because he was going to run for a third term as president, and I had backed legislation in the Senate limiting the election of presidents to 2 terms. So naturally, he withdrew his support from me, threw it to a fellow named Lloyd Stark, who was then the governor of Missouri. Stark was a very wealthy man in his own right. He had all the big money boys behind him, and as I told you, all the newspapers, he had every Democratic organization, every influential Democrat behind him. And I obviously had 2 choices. I could fold my tent, steal away, forget about politics for the rest of my life, possibly, or I could get off my butt and do something about it, and I chose the latter course. I sent Roosevelt a wire, and I said I was going to run if I got 1 vote, mine. But I needed more than that. I knew that, certainly. I thought I might get labor. Now, I had been instrumental in pushing through some rather good pro-labor legislation in my first term as senator, and I thought the boys might remember and be grateful. But I needed more than that. I needed every single vote I could find. And you know, it seems to me that every man, politically, maybe personally too, I don't know, but it seems to me, certainly politically, that every man before he dies should finally stand up and say what he really believes in. Of course, if it can be practical at the same time, well, so much the better. Because at that time in the state of Missouri, we had about 2 million mules, and each one of them was worth about $90 apiece. But at the same time, we had 245,000 Negroes. And some people thought they weren't worth anything. Well, they were wrong. It was wrong, and I said so, and I did it on the courthouse steps of Sedalia, Missouri, June 15th, 1940. It was a blistering hot summer day in Sedalia, and Sedalia was a center for the Ku Klux Klan in the state of Missouri, so there wasn't a black face in the crowd. Friends and neighbors, if I could have your attention, please, for just a moment, we'll get out of this sun. What, Howard? I can't hear. Oh, Howard, could you get up on something? Well, maybe, wait a minute. Listen, Howard, I'll yell it at you. I've only got a very little bit to say. It's too hot out here anyway, and I'll yell it at you. All right. Friends and neighbors, I did want to say before this election, just for the record, that I believe in the brotherhood of man. But not only in the brotherhood of white men, I believe in the brotherhood of all men before the law. And I got to believe that if I believe, as I do, in the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. Now, in recent years, we've all seen a mass exodus of the Negroes from the country areas here in Missouri into the large city areas. We all know the reason for that. It's lynchings, beatings, and 1,000 reasons. But the point is that when they have gotten to the large cities, the Negroes have been virtually ignored by the authorities. They're pushed into segregated slums. They barely have the necessities of life afforded them. And I believe as free men, they're entitled to more than that. Now, wait a minute, mister. Well, more than that, they're natural-born Americans, and more than that, they're human beings. All right, don't agree with that. I'll tell you something you've got to agree with, though, brother. And that is, if we continue to push the Negro down into the depths of degradation, the white man's going to go down with him. Oh, yes, he is. Because the law of compensation will apply. Booker T. Washington said it. He said if you're going to keep a black man in the gutter, there has to be a white man in the gutter to keep him there. I won that election by 8,000 votes. But you know, we made some progress since those days in civil rights. I believe that. But I also believe that the Negro in our society still has to walk too fine a line just to survive. I remember an old Negro back in Grandview, Missouri, many years ago. He told me that he'd gotten a bottle of booze from his boss, and I said, "How was it, John?" He said, "Just about right, Mr. Chairman." I said, "What do you mean, just about right, John?" He said, "Well, if it was any better, he wouldn't have given it to me. If it was any worse, I wouldn't have drunk it." You know, I just mentioned the Ku Klux Klan just now, and I'm going to tell you, they were a power in our part of the country. Oh, I tell you, they could make or break a politician. Very often, they figured very prominently in my campaign in 1924. Now, they were a rough bunch. Of course, they were only rough when they were in a bunch. Oh, yes, well, they were racist. They were congenital racists, and I always believed that their philosophy was the absolute ultimate in vulgarity. This, of course, was their shield. And behind this thing, they felt safe. This, of course, is a torch. We all know its purpose was to give man light, but in their hands, this torch very often was the witness to lynchings, beatings, and murder. A bunch of the Klan boys came to see me, in fact, just before the election in 1924. They came to my office, and they said they had a problem with me. They said they understood that my grandfather Solomon Young was a Jew, but they said they were willing to give me dispensation on that. If I would join them, they said they would support me in the coming election. Well, I looked at those miserable creatures and I said that my grandfather Solomon Young was not a Jew, but if he were, I would be very proud to say so, and that they could take their support and stick it where the good Lord intended all such things to be stuck. And we parted enemies. Thank God. You know, when a man stays in public life long enough, I guess he's got to expect almost anything to happen to him, but I think you've got to draw the line when your life is threatened, and it came to that because the Klan threatened to kill me. Now, Bess and I had just had our lovely little Margaret, and so naturally we both were very upset about it, but I knew in my heart there was only one way to handle the thing, and that was head on. And so the boys were having one of their Klan powwows up at Lee's Summit, Missouri, and I thought it might be just the place to confront them. Now, I wanted to go alone, naturally, but my friend Eddie Jacobson insisted on going with me. And I've got to tell you, it was a very courageous thing for Eddie to do, because Eddie, of course, was one of the things the Klan hated most on this earth. Eddie was a Jew. Evening, boys. I understand that some of you threatened to kill me. Well, if you want to take your lives in your hands, let's have a go at it right now. So you're the boys that are going to tell me that I can't hire a Catholic or Negro or Jew or whoever you don't happen to cotton to, huh? Well, being farm kin, you got to know that is pure, undiluted bullshit. Because I'm going to hire anybody I goddamn well please, boys. Those jobs are for all the people and not just a few hooded bastards like you. Shame on you. Shame on you. Calling yourselves the invisible empire where the good Lord should strike you from the face of this earth. Well, I'm going to leave you, chosen people. But wait a minute. Before I do, I want to tell you what Eddie Jacobson said on the way up here. Eddie said whoever organized your courageous gang had to be a Jew, because only a Jew could sell you silly idiots a $1.95 nightshirt for $16. Well, Eddie and I are going to try and find a saloon now and strike a blow for liberty. I lost that election. Oh, they beat me. They beat me. But you know, I was never prouder to lose anything in my entire life.